I hadn't seen my father in almost 5 years, and the first thing he did when I walked into that conference room was glare at me, like I was the court-ordered termite inspector, not his daughter. The air inside Halston and Wexler LLP smelled like lemon polish and generational power. My sister Mia was already sitting at the table, legs crossed, smug smile in place, like she'd just won a lawsuit blindfolded. At the head of the table sat my father, Victor Halston, posture stiff, hands folded like he was chairing a board meeting, not sitting through his father's will. Ms. Wexler, the family's estate lawyer, nodded at me politely. She'd been with the family since before I could spell inheritance, back when everyone still pretended I was one of them. No one stood up. No hugs. No one asked about my last deployment, or even if I'd come back with all my limbs. I wasn't here for them anyway. I was here because I'd promised my grandfather, Walter, I'd show up. That was it. Ms. Wexler cleared her throat and opened a thick folder. She spoke like someone reading assembly instructions for a bookshelf that might ruin a marriage. To Mia Halston, she began, the Evergreen Lake House and the Steinway grand piano. Mia blinked. She'd expected the company, the empire. She got a lake house and some keys. To Victor Halston, Ms. Wexler continued, a first edition Hemingway set and a $10,000 donation to the American Ethics Council, made in his name. My father scoffed. Is this a joke? Ms. Wexler didn't flinch. She turned the page. And to Riley Halston, my granddaughter, my only confidant, I leave the remainder of my estate. Silence. She kept going. This includes all financial assets, real estate holdings, and voting control over Halston's strategic systems, effective immediately. I didn't blink. My dad's jaw tightened. Mia's smile faltered. Then Ms. Wexler reached into her briefcase and slid a check across the table toward me. It was quiet, crisp, signed and dated. The amount, $38,246,000. Before I even touched it, Victor lunged forward, snatched the check like it had insulted his bloodline. You think this brings you back? He snapped. Then, without warning, he pulled a lighter from his pocket and set the check on fire, right there, in front of all of us. The flame curled the edge of the paper, the signature burning first like it was nothing. Mia gasped. Ms. Wexler didn't even blink. She leaned back in her chair, calm as ever, like this wasn't the first time a man had torched a fortune out of spite. Victor looked at me, eyes burning hotter than the flame. That's what you get for walking out. I didn't move, didn't scream. I just smiled. Not the happy kind. The kind of smile you wear when you already know how the story ends, and now you're just watching everyone else catch up. Because what he burned wasn't what he thought it was. He didn't know about the second envelope tucked inside my coat pocket. The one Grandpa gave me a month before he died, wrapped in a diner napkin like it was scripture. Don't open this, he'd told me, unless they try to burn it. They did. So I waited. Not out of fear, out of timing. Because I knew the more silence filled that room, the more cracks would show. And they did. Victor demanded a rereading. Mia wanted an audit. Victor accused Ms. Wexler of forgery like she was some criminal mastermind with a weakness for military granddaughters. I just sat there, hands folded, feeling the heat of the fire fade off the table. If you're still watching this, hit that like button, drop a comment, and hit subscribe, especially if your family has ever tried to gaslight you out of your damn name. See? People like them only understand power when it's visible. They think if they burn the paper, they burn the proof. They think if they shout loud enough, they win. They think if they erase you on paper, you stop existing. But they don't know what I learned in Kandahar. They don't know how many nights I stayed invisible because that was the only way to survive. They don't know what Grandpa whispered to me the day I left. You're the only one I trust to finish what I started. So when Victor flicked the ashes of that check across the table and said I was out, I just smiled again. Because I already knew. I was the only one still in. Under the table, my fingers brushed the edge of the envelope. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Let them scream. Let them set the whole damn room on fire. My job was done the second I saw the look on Mia's face, the exact moment she realized the empire she thought she inherited had just slipped right through her French manicured fingers. I stood up without a word. No dramatics. Just the sound of my boots echoing on polished wood. The parking lot outside the courthouse was mostly empty. Same cracked asphalt, same leaning oak tree by the exit gate. I used to climb that thing when I was 8, before Victor told me girls didn't belong in trees. That was the first time I realized maybe I didn't belong anywhere. The drive back to my apartment was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. Just listened to the hum of the road and the thud of my own heartbeat, trying to outrun my thoughts. The envelope Grandpa gave me sat on the passenger seat like it weighed 20 pounds. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I poured a glass of water, stood in my kitchen, and stared out the window at a street I didn't love but never left. The stillness felt too familiar, like the silence I came home to after my first deployment. It was Thanksgiving. I'd been gone 18 months. Syria, border patrols, convoy defense. I'd seen friends bleed out in the sand. Buried a journal under rubble after a roadside bomb blew up 2 feet from my cot. Still had the ringing in my right ear. And when I walked through that front door, Victor just said, "You didn't write? No welcome home. No glad you made it. Just judgment, secondhand and suffocating." The house didn't look the same either. My room was gone. Physically gone. Bed replaced. Bookshelves cleared. Every photo. Every letter. My graduation flag. Gone. Like I'd never lived there. In their place, beige armchairs, a fake orchid, and a framed quote about calm waters and quiet minds. It looked like a dentist's waiting room, only this one had a door that used to say, Riley. Now it said guest. Mia passed me in the hallway with a mug of peppermint tea and smirked. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You were gone like a year and a half." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I left. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment off the I-45 bypass. Worked part-time security at a logistics yard while waiting on my VA paperwork to clear. Every few weeks, a wire transfer would show up. Just enough to pay rent, keep the lights on. It was from someone named W. Halston. No note, no call. But I knew it was Grandpa. He never said much, but he saw me. Clearly, cleanly. When I was 12 and wanted to join JROTC, he bought me boots that fit, and gave me a look like I'd just passed some secret test. When Victor said the military was a dead end for people who couldn't cut it in business, Grandpa just said, "Maybe that's why your board meetings feel like war zones." He never picked sides. He picked me. And when the calls from him stopped, I knew something was wrong. I visited him once, near the end. He looked thinner, quieter, but still sharp. He handed me the envelope at the Hillcrest Diner. We split a piece of lemon pie. His coffee was cold. "Don't open this unless they burn it," he told me. I laughed, sarcastic. "What? You think they're gonna light $1 million check on fire?" He didn't smile. "I think they'll try to erase you." And somehow we both knew he was right. Back in the kitchen, I finally sat down, peeled open the envelope carefully. It was sealed with red wax, his kind of old school. Inside was a folded letter and a USB drive taped to the back. The paper was notarized, dated 3 weeks before he died. It was a trust transfer form. Real. Binding. That check Victor torched? Just bait. The real money? Already moved. Quietly. Legally. Everything was processed with a digital trail that would have made Victor sweat through his custom-tailored navy blazer. I scanned the account number at the bottom. The last 4 digits were Grandpa's birthday in reverse. Of course. He knew I'd remember. I plugged in the USB. No password. Just a single folder labeled Inheritance. Inside, bank docs, trust agreements, control transfers, and a draft of a second will. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. Proof. Then I logged into my banking app to verify the account. Error. Account not found. I refreshed it. Tried again. Slower. Nothing. I used another card. Declined. Panic didn't hit all at once. It settled in slowly, like cold water rising up your chest. I called customer service. A guy named Dylan picked up. Sounded like he'd rather be anywhere else. Yeah, hi, my account says it doesn't exist anymore. Can you check on that? He asked for my name, date of birth, social security. I gave them all. Pause. Ma'am, he said carefully, our records show this account was marked inactive. What does that mean? Deceased, actually. Silence. That's a mistake, I said. Another pause. Then, it was certified through the registrar's office. 2 weeks ago. I hung up before he could finish the next sentence. Next stop, DMV. Waited in line behind a woman arguing about a ticket from 2006. When I got to the counter, I handed over my ID. The clerk frowned, tapped a few keys. Ma'am, you're flagged as legally deceased. I'm standing right here. I get that, but the system doesn't. You'll have to file a correction through Vital Records. How long does that take? Could be months. End of Q2, maybe. I walked out before I put a fist through a window. Back on the sidewalk, I felt like a ghost. People passed me like I was normal, like I existed. But the thing about bureaucracy, once they decide you're dead, it takes a hell of a lot to come back. I pulled my coat tighter. The sky had gone gray, and across the street, under a row of bare trees, a woman was watching me, standing still. Quiet. A pair of oversized sunglasses covered half her face. Her scarf, blue silk, was looped once around her neck. It was my mother's scarf, the one she said the dry cleaners lost 3 years ago. She didn't wave, didn't move, just watched. I stepped into traffic. By the time I reached the other side, she was gone. Back at my apartment, I tore through every drawer, every bookshelf, every envelope Grandpa had ever sent me. There were dozens. Folded notes, old receipts, scribbled jokes, and quotes clipped from newspapers. His handwriting, always steady, even when he was sick. In one envelope, tucked inside a worn-out copy of The Old Man and the Sea, I found it. A brass key, wrapped in a faded red handkerchief. A tag dangled off it, handwritten, Langford Storage, Box 17. He gave it to me on my 18th birthday, said, "You'll need this someday." I guess someday had arrived. I grabbed my coat and walked out before I could talk myself out of it. Langford Storage sat on the edge of the industrial zone, 15 minutes from my place. The street was lined with crumbling storefronts and shuttered windows. I parked in front of a wine shop that hadn't sold a bottle since the Bush administration. There was no sign on the door. Just a black buzzer and a camera with a blinking red light. I pressed it once. A woman in her late 50s opened the door. Crisp ponytail, no name tag, no smile. "You have a key?" she asked. I handed it over. She checked a clipboard, nodded, and motioned me in. The hallway was cold, narrow. The walls were lined with steel vaults and flickering fluorescent lights. No music, no chatter. Just the sound of our footsteps and a hum in the vents that sounded vaguely like tension. We passed 6 doors before she stopped, punched in a code, and opened a reinforced steel door. "Box 17, she said. "Take your time. Shut the door when you're done." Inside was a narrow room. No windows, no clock. Just concrete, metal drawers, and dustless air. I found the drawer labeled 17, waist height, slid it open. Inside were 2 things, a black fireproof folder and a manila envelope. No dust, no smell, like it had been waiting. I sat on the cold concrete floor. The first thing I pulled out was a cashier's check, identical to the one Victor had burned. Same amount, same name, but this time, security embedded and verified. The watermark shimmered under the light. Taped to the back, a small red sticker, non-negotiable copy burned. Grandpa had planned for this. The manila envelope had a sticky note on it. In his handwriting, "Trust no one, not even her." No name, just her. But I had a good guess. Inside were records, printouts of emails, handwritten memos, drafts of legal documents. He'd documented everything. Conversations with attorneys, ownership transfers, board meeting agendas from Halston Strategic Systems, even travel receipts. All signed, all time-stamped. And some of the pages had Mia's name on them. Meeting minutes she attended. Agreements she signed. All in ink. This wasn't casual. She wasn't on the sidelines. The final item in the folder was heavier. A velvet pouch. Inside, a flash drive. And a note in Grandpa's blocky script. Play only once, and only when you're alone. I left fast. Back at my apartment, I pulled the blinds, locked the door, and plugged in the drive. No folders, no passwords. Just one file, W. Halston Final. I clicked it. Grandpa's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his old sunroom, sunlight pouring over his shoulder. His voice was calm, even, like he was delivering the weather report for the apocalypse. If you're seeing this, Riley, he said, then they did exactly what I knew they would do. He paused, hands folded, voice steady. I watched them lie to your face. I watched them weaponize your silence. And I didn't stop them. That ends now. He leaned forward. You were the only one who ever told me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. That's why I left it all to you. Not the money, the mission, the name, the ground it stands on. Because I know you'll do what needs doing. Another pause. Victor will try to erase you. He'll say you abandoned us. He'll pretend you never mattered. Let him. He looked directly at the camera. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man with power is a woman with receipts. The screen went black. No fade out, no goodbye, just silence. I sat there, alone, surrounded by proof that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting, but the relief didn't last. I logged into my bank again, still locked out. I tried the VA portal, access denied. Then I tried something else. I pulled out my original documents, my birth certificate, social security card, passport, all still in my name. I took them to the county registrar. The clerk glanced at my documents, then at her screen. She frowned. Your file's been closed, she said. What do you mean closed? Court order, sealed emergency motion. From who? She squinted. Family Estate Division. Can I see it? Not unless a judge unseals it. How long does that take? She looked up from her monitor. Depends who you pissed off. I walked out with a headache and a printed confirmation of the worst-case scenario. I'd been erased, legally, and someone had filed it like it was a parking appeal. Back home, I dug through the vault docs again. One name kept popping up. Dr. Cambria Fenney. Retired physician. Used to make house calls for wealthy families. Ours included. One email showed she'd submitted a letter to the court, verifying long-term identity instability and delusional episodes due to combat trauma. I had never met this woman in my life. Her number? Disconnected. Her address? Still in the system. One town over. I drove there that night. It was a rundown house with peeling paint and a cracked mailbox. No car in the driveway, but there was mail inside the box. Dated 2 days ago. Someone still lived there. I waited. 30 minutes later, a gray sedan pulled up. A thin woman got out with 2 bags of groceries. She looked up and froze when she saw me. I stepped out of my car slowly, hands in my pockets. I'm not here to hurt you, I said. She didn't move. But you signed something about me, something false, and I need to know who told you to. Her mouth opened, then closed. Was it Victor Halston? A slow nod. He said you were mentally unwell, she whispered. Said you'd suffered brain injuries, that you imagined things that didn't happen. And you believed him. He said you agreed to it, she said, voice breaking. I stared at her. You thought it was what? Paperwork cleanup? She looked down at her feet. I thought it was just estate planning. I didn't think they'd actually file it. You thought he wanted a fake psych report just for fun? Silence. I thought it was harmless, she whispered. It wasn't guilt that burned most. It was how easy it had been. How casual. How normal it was for someone to disappear a veteran with one signature and one lie. And somewhere in all that paperwork, I knew Mia's name was waiting. I didn't go home after I left the doctor's house. I drove straight to the one person I knew could help me set the whole thing on fire and do it legally. Her name was Sylvia Marsh. Harvard Law, former civil rights litigator, veteran advocate, and currently running her own war room out of a rent-controlled apartment above a hardware store. She answered the door in sweatpants and a Harvard hoodie faded from too many washes. In one hand, a slice of cold pizza. In the other, a coffee mug that smelled like burnt battery acid. She looked me up and down. "This better be illegal." "It is." "Good," she said, handing me the pizza. "Eat. You look like a ghost with a grudge." I sat down on her battered leather couch while she cleared a space on the coffee table stacked with case files. I handed her a folder. Inside, everything. The trust docs, the forged death certificate, the medical report, the fake stock transfers, the videos, the letters. She flipped through them like she was counting cards in a casino she'd already won. At the back of the folder, she paused. "They forged your signature. Can you prove it?" She tapped her phone and called someone named Miles. "Crow, it's Marsh. I've got a live one. Military, inheritance, forgeries, fake death certificate. Bring the clean laptop." She hung up and turned back to me. "Miles Crow," she said. "Forensic document analyst, ex-Intel. He can spot a forgery faster than a politician can deny one." 45 minutes later, Miles arrived. Mid-30s, calm, wireframe glasses, a face that looked like it hadn't smiled since 2016. He nodded at me like we were already teammates in a crisis. No small talk. He pulled out his tools. A UV lamp, a high-res scanner, a portable spectrograph. I handed him my originals, military orders, discharge papers, 6 years of federally filed documents, all with my signature. He examined the forged equity transfer from Halston Strategic. 2 minutes in, he looked up. "See this?" He pointed. "You always hook your Gs. That little curve on the downstroke." I nodded. He flipped to the forged doc. "Flat, no hook. And this?" It scanned. "My guess, they lifted it from your DD-214, the one public enough to Google. Can you prove it?" He didn't answer. Just loaded the 2 signatures into software, ran a compression overlay, then a pressure pattern comparison. "There's your proof," he said. "This would collapse in court under 10 minutes. Sylvia handed me a thick printout. "Here's what that forgery gave them. They sold off 40% of your voting shares to a shell company tied to Victor's real estate trust. They're trying to consolidate before the next board vote. And Mia, she signed it, with your name, while you were legally dead." I didn't blink. "That's not just civil," Miles added. "That's wire fraud, document fraud, possibly conspiracy." "And if the notary was a friend of Victor's?" Sylvia said. "Then we're in perjury territory," Miles replied. "And since the assets cross state lines, that's federal." Sylvia leaned forward. "This is the thread. We pull it. Everything unravels." I stared down at the signatures. It was surreal. Like watching someone wear your face and wave from a balcony you've never stepped on. Sylvia continued. "I filed an injunction to freeze the board's next move, but we need a judge to see this in person. What do you need from me?" "Full access, military records, VA docs, anything with your real signature." I pulled another folder from my bag. Sylvia nodded. "This is enough." Miles handed me a flash drive. "Full forensic backup of your signature analysis. Keep it safe." Sylvia stood up. "Here's what we do. We sit on this until audit week. 11 days. That's when the board is most vulnerable. We walk it into court. No scandal. No drama. Just facts and fire." "I don't want spectacle," I said. "I want precision." "Then you came to the right place," she said. Before I left, Sylvia handed me a burner phone. "Keep this on you. No social media. No updates. Don't play hero. You're not in a movie. Let us build the kill shot." I nodded. She leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" "I thought I was done with war." She gave a crooked smile. "Family wars are worse. No rules. Just fallout." I left an hour later, burner phone in my pocket. A folder labeled Temp Legal Hold in my bag. As I pulled into my apartment lot, a message came in from Miles. "We'll verify every doc. But first, we find the signature that buries them." I didn't reply. Instead, I drove straight to South Brighton. Behind a busted metal fence was a row of old storage units. No cameras, no contracts. Just a guy named Dennis who didn't ask questions as long as your rent cleared. Mine always did. Inside Unit 11B, a black plastic footlocker sat under a tarp. Scratched, military issued, dented from 2 deployments and 3 rotations through hell. I popped the latches. Inside, my deployment binder. Original paperwork. Orders. Comm logs. Handwritten reports. And most importantly, 6 years' worth of ink and paper signatures. The real ones. Unedited. Untouched. I took the whole thing to Sylvia that night. Miles was already waiting. He took one look at the binder and exhaled through his nose like it was a Christmas gift. "This," he said, "is how you bury a fake." 2 hours later, we had what we needed. A full affidavit. Signature overlays. Court-admissible proof that my name had been stolen to help steal a company. And that's when Sylvia looked at me and said, "You want revenge or justice? What's the difference? Justice follows the law, revenge breaks it." I didn't answer, because in my head I already knew. I wanted both, but not in the same box. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Nash Wilder, veteran journalist, regional Emmy winner, known for exposing a defense contractor bribery ring in Arlington. Smart, sharp, zero tolerance for BS. He'd tried to contact Mia 3 months ago for a piece. She ghosted him, but I remembered the name. He picked up on the first ring. "This is Wilder. This is Riley Halston." Pause. "You the one Braden Tech declared dead?" "That's me." Another pause, tighter this time. "Interesting. What changed?" "I didn't stay dead." "That'll do it." We met that night at a diner off Route 15. He wore a beat-up denim jacket, had a recorder on the table before I even sat down. No pleasantries. Just, let's hear it. I laid everything out. The forged documents, the trust transfer, the falsified psych report, the fake death certificate, the forensic affidavit, the videos from my grandfather. Everything. Nash didn't blink. He just wrote, nodded, and occasionally tapped his phone. When I was done, he leaned back. "I've heard whispers. Victor's trying to take Braden Tech public." "That's the play. Can't do that clean if $38 million in shares were signed over by a ghost." He tapped the recorder off. "Do you want this public? Or do you want leverage?" "I want the truth to work harder than their lies." "Copy that." He didn't promise a timeline. Just said, "You'll know when it hits." 2 days later it did. The first article dropped. "Daughter declared dead. Cut from $38 million inheritance. Braden Tech power struggle exposed." It hit the news cycle like a lit match in a room full of fumes. By noon, it had spread across corporate blogs, Reddit threads, military subforums, and niche stock trackers. My inbox flooded with screenshots and WTF messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Victor went on local news that afternoon to try damage control. Sat there in a navy suit, American flag lapel pin, trimmed beard, smooth voice, carefully practiced sympathy. "We're deeply saddened by the misinformation being spread. Riley has struggled since her return from active duty. The family has done its best to support her. But sometimes, people lash out." They cut to B-roll of me in uniform, walking off a C-130, boots dragging, helmet in hand. Then flashed an old headline. "Civilian Casualty Inquiry. Sergeant Halston refuses strike order." That was their angle. Make me unstable. Make me the problem. No mention that the strike I refused would have flattened a school. No mention that the inquiry cleared me. No mention that the only reason I got reported was because the contractor running the airstrike was the commanding officer's cousin. They weaponized my past like it was campaign strategy. Sylvia called before I could hurl something through the TV. "Breathe," she said. "This is what scared looks like with a press team." 5 minutes later, a text from Miles. "Let them overplay. The receipts don't blink." He was right. Men like Victor think power makes them invisible, but they've never gone to war with someone trained to disappear and hit back without making a sound. That night, I got 3 anonymous tips in my inbox. All former Braden Tech employees. One from internal audits, one from digital operations, one from someone with a severance package and a buried NDA. The third attachment changed everything. A PDF, asset transfer logs, false consulting invoices, fund movement records. And on page 17, plain as day, signature, Mia Halston, on behalf of Riley Halston. Same fake signature Miles flagged. Same date as the forged death certificate. They hadn't stopped at stock. They were moving cash. Sylvia filed for an emergency hearing with the district court. I stayed up all night reading the file. On the last page, a receipt for a courier service. The name listed for pickup? Phoebe Halston, my stepmother. Victor's second wife. She vanished after Mom died. Married Victor within the year. Always quiet, polished, detached. Like a mannequin that could blink. I hadn't thought about her in years, but her name was there, clear as ink. I didn't hesitate. I called her. She didn't answer the first time, or the second. On the third, she picked up. Her voice, smooth and distant, like someone doing a phone interview from a spa. Riley, you knew. I didn't sign anything, she said immediately. I didn't ask what you signed. I handed Victor an envelope. That's it. He said it was insurance paperwork for estate protection. He lied. I believe that now. Silence. He had a notary come by, said it was a friend. I signed a release form. Didn't read it. When? 3 weeks before your grandfather passed. Did you see the death certificate? A long pause. Yes. Did you read it? Another pause. No. That's all I needed to hear. I didn't thank her. I just hung up. Because it wasn't the lies that burned. It was how easy it had been to help erase me. A forgotten signature. A friend with a notary stamp. A few assumptions. And suddenly I was legally gone. That night, I pulled out my original Social Security card, passport, birth certificate. All real, all untouched. I walked them into the registrar's office and asked to speak with someone about a fraudulent death filing. The clerk pulled up my file, frowned, and said, I don't know how this happened, but your file was closed by sealed emergency order. Can I see the motion? No, not unless a judge unseals it. How long does that take? She looked over her glasses. Depends on who buried you. I walked out into the cold, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. They hadn't just tried to steal my name. They tried to kill it. I showed up to court in all black. No jewelry, no lipstick, just clean lines, polished boots, and a stare sharp enough to cut marble. Sylvia told me, dress like leadership. I told her, I already do. Victor walked in flanked by 2 lawyers straight out of a catalog. Navy suit, fresh haircut, jaw locked like the verdict was already against him. Behind him was Mia, moving like she hadn't slept. Eyes glassy, shoulders curled. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the air was electric, buzzing with something heavy and ready to detonate. Judge Rena Kinley presided. No nonsense. Known for throwing out emotional pleas like expired yogurt. Sylvia once told me Kinley had dismissed a hedge fund CEO mid-sentence for using the phrase family legacy too many times. That's exactly the kind of judge we wanted. Sylvia rose first. We're here to contest the fraudulent suppression of legal identity and the unauthorized execution of financial documents related to the estate of Walter Halston. Victor's lawyer, Benson Price, rose with a little half-sigh, like this was all so terribly inconvenient. Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding dressed up as conspiracy. The deceased's will was read and executed in good faith. My clients, Mr. Halston and Ms. Mia Halston, acted well within standard estate protocol. Kinley didn't blink. Then, she said, you won't mind if I view the video. Sylvia pressed a button on her tablet. The courtroom lights dimmed. The screen behind the bench lit up. And there he was, Grandpa, sitting in his sunroom. Calm, clear, no drama, just truth. If they're watching this, he said, it means they tried to bury her. But this isn't about money. It's about memory, legacy. And if they tried to burn hers down, this is how she comes back. The room was dead quiet when the screen faded to black. Kinley folded her hands, looked straight at the defense table. What is your response to this testimony? Benson cleared his throat. It's emotionally compelling, Your Honor, but irrelevant to the legal standing, Sylvia interrupted. Calm, clean. Then perhaps the forged signature, the fake death certificate, and the financial trail of asset transfers will provide relevance. She handed over the binder. Kinley flipped through it silently. Mia squirmed. Victor leaned forward like he was willing that binder to catch fire. After 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes, Kinley finally spoke. Let the record reflect that I find the evidence of identity suppression and signature forgery credible and deeply concerning. Benson tried again. Your Honor, even if there was some procedural confusion, my clients operated under the belief that Ms. Halston had withdrawn from family and corporate responsibilities. Kinley didn't raise her voice. You didn't just alter paperwork, she said. You erased a person, a veteran, your daughter. She turned to Mia. And you helped. Mia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Kinley struck the gavel once. This court recognizes Riley Halston as the sole legal heir to Walter Halston's estate and the rightful controller of Halston Strategic Systems and all associated assets. All actions, transfers, or filings made under falsified authority are frozen pending criminal review. Victor's face didn't move. He looked like a man watching his castle slide into the ocean. Mia looked like she wanted to cry, but didn't remember how. Sylvia leaned toward me and whispered, You just took the throne. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras clicked. Questions flew. I said nothing. No statement, no smile. Just boots on stone and a weight I'd carried for years finally shifting into something I could hold. Later that afternoon, I met Mia at a downtown cafe. Neutral ground, overlit. Loud enough to drown out consequences. She was already sitting when I walked in. 2 untouched coffees on the table. She stood, nervous, unsure if she was greeting me or bracing for impact. I didn't know, she said quickly, about the death certificate, the inheritance. I swear, I said nothing. You signed it, I finally said. The equity transfer, the board filing. You signed my name. Dad told me it was just paperwork, standard restructuring. Did you read it? No. Did you ask? She looked down. I was scared. You chose survival, I said, and you signed me off the map. I didn't mean for it to go that far, but you let it. Tears welled. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like she needed something to hold that wasn't falling apart. I thought you'd just walk away again, she whispered. Like always. No, you thought I'd stay gone. She looked up. Her mouth trembled. I didn't think you'd fight. That's because I knew what happened when I stayed. A beat of silence. Then, so what happens now? I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, set it face down on the table. It had been recording since I sat down. She didn't notice. I'm not pressing charges, I said. You'll get whatever's fair under the law. But you're done. No seat at the table, no shares, no influence. She stared at me. I'm still your sister, and I'm still alive. That didn't seem to matter 3 months ago. I stood up, looked down at her, the half-finished version of someone I used to trust. You picked your side, Mia, I said. Now you get to live with it. Outside, the wind had picked up. I zipped my coat and kept walking, past the courthouse, past the news vans, past the people holding microphones waiting for a quote. I didn't give them one. I had somewhere to be. The building was small, red brick, wedged between a florist and a laundromat with the windows papered over. The lock clicked open like it had been waiting. Dust, silence, possibility. Inside, I unrolled the last envelope from Vault 2. Inside, a floor plan in Grandpa's handwriting, a half-finished business application, and a note with 4 words underlined twice. Make something they can't erase. So I did. I fast-tracked the license, reactivated the LLC I'd started years ago, filed permits, scheduled contractors, picked paint colors. 2 weeks later, the sign went up. Halston Foundation, Veterans, Women, Forward. No ribbon cutting, no press release. Just me and Dean, a friend from Kandahar who now ran a nonprofit rebuilding houses for women vets. We signed the final paperwork over cold coffee and a folded table in the lobby. What are you hoping to build? He asked. What I needed 10 years ago. First initiative. Legal support for female vets navigating housing claims and discharge issues. Second, mentorship pairing ROTC girls with veteran officers. I called it Operation Second Voice. Grandpa would have hated the branding, but loved the mission. Sylvia joined the board. Miles secured our back-end systems. Nash ran the press release 2 weeks later. Quiet, clean, no spin. I didn't need headlines. I had walls. One afternoon, while cleaning up after a group session, I found a letter in the mailbox. No return address, just my name. Inside, a photo. Grandpa and me. I was 7. We wore paper crowns made from birthday wrapping paper. On the back, in his handwriting, "Takes more than fire to stop royalty." I pinned it to the corkboard. No frame, just tacks. And that was enough. We didn't save the world. We didn't burn it down either. We built something they couldn't touch. If your family ever tried to rewrite your story, just remember, fire can't kill the truth. And no one gets to erase you unless you hand them the pen. Hit subscribe if you believe the strongest revenge is building something they can't destroy. Because survival isn't the end of the story. It's where the real one starts.